Greetings, everybody. I would like to welcome everyone to the October 15th meeting of the Select Infrastructure Committee. And as I was writing that down in abbreviation in my calendar this morning, I realized that the acronym for that is SICK. S-I-C. So maybe that is an omen, I'm not sure. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with an introduction around the rooms, and if we would, we'll start with Planning Commissioner Jim Aberwater.
Jim Aberwater, of course, I'm here to represent the Planning Commission. I'm also a retired home builder and almost retired small developer. I just want to hear everybody's ideas to try to keep the momentum going on this, on this fabulous county that we got, maintain the growth effort, and do what we can to make it even better for the future.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Jason Beavers with Old South Properties. Of course, you know, we've got a big stake in this county, and just glad to hear some ideas of what everybody comes up with.
I'm Kevin Atwood with New South Developers. I'm also here serving as Vice President of the Rutherford County Home Builders Association.
I'm Doug Bodery. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Schools for Budget and Finance. Here to speak about, of course, our needs in the school system.
Bill Spurlock, Director of Schools, Rutherford County. I'm here also with Mr. Bodery to discuss our needs and also look at some options that can kind of alleviate some of the strain that's on our county government.
I'm Hunter McDonald with Great Realty, but representing MSR today. Just here to hear some good ideas.
I'm Phil Dodd. I'm on the committee. I'm a Rutherford County Commissioner. And on this committee, I'm representing budget.
Property management.
Property management. You've got budget. Okay.
I am Michael. I'm sorry. Well, go ahead. I'll go last.
Okay. I'm Paul Johnson. I'm representing the road department, highway department. I'm on my 13th year as the county commissioner, and I'm on my 20th year with the road board. And I presently serve on the property management committee and the budget committee and the purchasing committee with the county.
I'm Tim Tips. I'm a lender with Wilson Bank and Trust. I'm chairman currently for the Home Builders Association of Central Tennessee now, board of directors, and also involved with the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors on their government affairs committee as well.
My name's Ryan Leith with the Avison Group. I'm here representing the Home Builders Association of Central Tennessee, involved with government affairs and 3 other committees with me as well.
Fantastic. Any folks in the audience that want to chime in and be on record? I'm looking at you specifically.
You looking at Joe or me?
Well, I'm John Harney and been involved with real estate, residential and commercial development for a lot of years. Here to listen.
Joe Swanson with Swanson Developments.
Thanks, Joe. And we have our county attorney here as well. And in the back behind, yeah, there we go.
Steve Jensen with Jensen Quality Homes.
All right, Steve, thank you. And Matt, what about you?
You said it for me.
Matt Taylor with SEC. And we have Doug DeMasi and Mike Hughes with Planning and Engineering. All right, and I'm Mike Cush, County Commissioner on the Public Works Committee, Chairman of the Public Works Committee, and Vice Chair of Planning. The Public Works Committee and the Planning Group challenged us to resurrect and look at new ways to help fund roads without a property tax increase. Not a new story. This road we've been down before, always with very much pushback from Nashville and our state representatives and senators and legislators. So I took the challenge and assembled this board, and what we're trying to do is see what possibilities are out there to keep the burden off just the standard and only means we really have, which is the increased property taxes. Our neighboring counties at least the ones that have any money, which would be Williamson and Wilson, have continued to increase, as you developers and folks that represent the Home Builders Association know, continue to impact you with assessments. You can call them a number of different things, but whether they call it an education assessment or an infrastructure assessment, you know, they're continuing to pound you with fees on the development side as you put new roofs on the ground. Williamson County just recently, the other day, added another, I think, $1,200 or $2,000 on top of the fees they're already charging you. Wilson County, a couple of weeks ago, their full commission added an assessment. I think it was they call it an educational assessment of what now totals a $5,000 new roof hit on you. So, which concerns me a little bit, because now where Rutherford County is already being swamped with new growth, it's even going to be more attractive to builders because the fees are so much cheaper now to surrounding counties. So it could be a double whammy for us. But here's the problem. First of all, I want to say, me personally, and I'll speak for, well, I'll just stick with me personally. I'm a pro-growth guy. I'm on my second term as a county commissioner. I've been in the planning commission for 12 years. I'm a pro-growth guy. While some in the community think that developers are the cause of all the problem with the infrastructure and the crowding, and you know, they would stand at your gate with pitchforks and torches thinking that you're the bad guy. I understand that's not the case. Rutherford County is a cool place to be. It is the IT county, and developers are building houses because they are providing a need because of the growth, right? It's the circle of life. I get that. We get that. Our constituents, the community, sees maybe a shaded or not the full circle of that, and they see overcrowding of streets, congestion, trying to get from north of the county to south of the, or let's just talk about town. Let's talk about Murfreesboro. East to west, north to south, you know, 20 to 30 minute drive. We're all familiar with that. It's frustrating. Congestion's a problem. On the Planning Commission, Jim and I sit on, you know, we're constantly seeing large subdivisions being pushed farther out into the community, where land is maybe a little cheaper, where once nice farmland is, you know, those folks are cashing in their retirement and developing. And so we as the county is expected to provide infrastructure out to your subdivisions. Schools the same way. You know, the schools are trying to be diligent in finding, in the concept of a campus plan, large tracts of land, and large tracts of land are normally found a little distance outside of downtown or the core of the city. So that's where the cheap large tracts of land is found. And so we get good deals on big tracts, and then we find inadequate roads to get our kids to those schools. And that has been a real eye-opener. And so we thank the school side for trying to find us good, inexpensive land, and then in the same breath we think, well, now it's going to cost us $8 million in roads improvements to get, say, 2 buses to be able to pass on the same road. So that's the challenge. And we're trying to keep that off the taxpayer all the time. So, and even off the school side, again, on the planning side, when we see lots of subdivisions being, plats and plans come across Jim and I's desk, a lot of congestions on small county roads that just really weren't meant for that much population and trips in and out. So we're trying to figure a way, what can the developer do to help us with some of that impact as they're using up capacity on the roads. So that's kind of how this committee formed. Now, I'm going to take a sidestep and get into the meat of our conversation today. We have two real meats of the conversation today. Doug and Bill are going to chat a little bit about the school side. And let me give you a little history for those of you who don't know Doug. Doug in his prior life was also with CTAS. And Doug is, he's one of those guys that knows a lot of stuff that we all wish we knew about government. And he kind of knows where like all the little skeletons are buried in the paragraph. You know, all that legalese paragraph stuff that we read and have to read 10 times and still don't know what it means. Doug's the kind of guy that can cipher through all that stuff. And I don't want to put too much pressure on you now. He can, yeah, it's a high bar, but he can kind of help us say, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and if you want to do this, you're going to have to go downtown and convince your legislator and representative and senator to change something. So he's going to at least tell us what the playing field is going to be. He also has some exciting news about things that he's working on for the road board to help get some extra road money too. And then we're going to get into the developer discussion. We wanted to get the developers involved because we know you're not the bad guys. We don't want that image to get out there in the public that you're the bad guys. So we want to see if you have any thoughts on how you can help us. Jim and I have sit in on numerous presentations in planning about traffic sheds. We've talked to Williamson County about traffic sheds. That's not really the way I don't think we want to go. We know it's a tool, but you know, with a traffic shed, you either say, okay, you're allowed to do this many homes based on this study, or you are limited to do it, or let me rephrase that. You come in and you want to do 300 homes, you do the study, and the traffic shed says, yeah, you can really only do 150 unless you're, and your choices are you can improve the roads to do your 300, or you can just do the 150. Well, we don't want to really get to that point, but we're kind of getting to that point. So we want to hear some discussion from you guys.
That just affects land value, what you can
Yeah.
pay for the land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, let's keep that to part two. So part one, I'm going to turn the floor over to the school side. So Doug, take it away.
All right, first what, I'm Bill Spurlock, Director of Rutherford County Schools. I think Commissioners stated real well. We're growing by 1,000 students each year. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged 13.2% growth. That's a lot of school building. We currently have 49 campuses. We're looking at building another school here in the next year or so. That's a burden on the county. It's a huge burden on them. And we also have to keep up these schools. That's one thing we kind of forget about at times. Currently, when we look at our capital project list over the next 5 years, we can spend about $60-something million. It's almost like building another school. So what we looked at, and this is something that's been proposed, I think, for several years, is the Capital Investment Act. That was in the bill that was introduced in the House, 124, and the Senate, 198. And what it primarily did was look at state sales tax and reallocating for the fastest growing school districts. And last year, I think it got behind the budget. But if we, for example, for this past year, Rutherford County, if this law had passed, That would be, we would have received an additional $3.76 million in funding, which could help us with these capital projects. And, I think we all would agree in the state of Tennessee, there's what they have in this current breakdown of what systems and what counties would qualify. There's about 39 school districts qualify, but that would include just 32 counties. And this funding could help us offset some of the costs, also prevent us from having to go to the county commission and requesting a property tax increase in order to help us with our capital projects. I think this is a great opportunity for you guys. You could get behind that. Our school board has already passed a resolution, and it's not putting any burden on anyone. It's actually just getting some funding from the additional funding from the state, which has been discussed for several years now. And I think that's a great way of quite frankly, of looking at another way of handling some of these challenges without having to raise taxes and just tapping into what some existing tax already there.
So basically, short question. So basically, the source of this funding is existing sales tax that the state has and is using it for something else, and we're asking them to redirect it.
Right. I think it says it right in here on this resolution here. Basically, it's based on the growth. Am I correct on that? It's based on the growth and the impact, and it has a breakdown on the percentage of growth over a 5-year period. We're in the top 5 there. You got Rutherford County, Murfreesboro City, Williamson, Wilson. All those are high growing areas. And what it does is it reallocates some of that state sales tax based on ADM, what's called average daily membership for our students that we have that are increasing each year. So it sends some more of that revenue back to us. The state does.
So what do you have to do to say, where's my money?
Yeah, well, what we need is some, of course, obviously, we're going to need these other 32 counties getting together, and we're working through that process, too. And we're working with our state legislators. We do have currently, we've spoken to 2, and they're on board with this. We need to really get this in front of the governor early in this budgetary process that will be coming up, because I think last year that it was kind of put behind the budget due to the fact of the timing of it. The timing was late. So what we want to do is kind of develop a little consensus on everyone's part that that this go forward, and this can kind of alleviate not just Rutherford County, but this can kind of help a lot of our surrounding 32 counties and 39 school districts. It could kind of help everyone out.
But you can't do it individually. You have to get all 31 other counties on board.
I think if you don't do that, you'll end up, you won't get consensus. I think you've got to. Doug, you can speak on it. I think the more we can get these other ones on board with it, so that we can get their state legislatures, and that's how we can get it passed within the General Assembly.
Like Mr. Burke saying, what this is. Because we talk about this would impact the growth communities.
Right.
Not, when you look at Tennessee as a whole, a lot of the counties are actually losing students. You get into these, and I know that sounds foreign to us, right, but over 1,000 a year for 5 years. This actually would basically say, look, these growth counties like us that are needing additional funding for infrastructure, and as you can see behind this, we actually tagged on, this was reviewed by the school board. This is our current capital needs right now for our existing schools. We have been so busy building new schools. We have some issues, major issues as far as HVAC, roofs, nothing fancy, just stuff that needs to be done on our existing buildings that total over $60 million. This funding would be able to finance some revenue or a bond to basically catch us up with the needed infrastructure improvements. And then what the commission's already allocated us right now would keep us up and going for those improvements. What this does is it's saying on those growth counties like us, we're the economic generators of the state of Tennessee. Counties like Rutherford, Williamson, Wilson. It's saying, look, we want you to reallocate a small portion of the state portion of the sales tax back to our county to be earmarked for these school infrastructure improvements, to take it off the local tax base and the developers and allow us to share some of the additional revenue that's being generated in our county. So it goes back, if this passed, the way it was written, if this had passed this last session, this would have been the equivalent of a 65% increase in our county development tax, earmarked to improve our school system.
So how many dollars per year are you estimating that this would generate?
It's probably around somewhere around 3 to 4 million, between $3 or $4 million.
This would also benefit Murfreesboro. It's right here.
Murfreesboro's in there also.
Yeah. This was created by Fiscal Review up at the state, these numbers. And once again, this was based on last year, like Mr. Spurlock said, was on this page right here. If it had passed as it was, the estimate of revenue that it would have brought in for Rutherford County to be earmarked to school, educational capital improvements, or debt payment, this could have gone in the county debt service fund, it would have been $3,760,000. For Murfreesboro City, it would have generated just under $700,000 for the city for capital improvements for their schools. And once again, it got behind the budget. There was other funding needs at the state that they chose over this, I'm sorry.
And I think it was probably, a lot of it was because of the timing of it.
Yes.
I think if we get it before, early in the process, we'll have a better chance of getting it passed.
And we're really glad that you folks are here, the developers and the realtors, because this right here was, it impacts the growth counties, not all the counties. It benefits those that I'm sure that you guys are seeing the same issues that are coming up as this commission sees, and Medford and Wilson, Williamson, Sumner, all of them, same issue. This would benefit them. And not a tax increase. Redistribution of funds that are being generated in the growth counties back for their needs.
So this is a House bill and a Senate bill. And it was researched by the Tennessee General Assembly Fiscal Review Committee. They created the data.
That's it.
So it was sponsored at one time
Yes.
to have HB in it. Is it still sponsored, or did it fall off the
No, it's still.
agenda?
It's there, it was just put behind the budget and died, but it obviously can be, it's his second year it's been up there.
Okay.
So, and obviously it's gonna come back next year.
We know our local legislators, at least we know 3 of them, we've been able to talk to, are going to go forward with it. And it impacts, one in particular, it impacts about every one of his areas, 4 of the 5 areas. So it's, it's something that we can gain traction with this.
Okay.
It's quicker as we can get it going.
And its benefit here is just to generate some awareness in this particular industry, and perhaps generate some encouragement to our legislators to
We're
get
gonna
behind
need
this.
We're
Yeah,
gonna need their help.
we're going to need everyone's help.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Bill, when you say this redirecting, so where are those funds being redirected from?
From state sales, the portion of the state's sales tax.
So just
That we
rather than them
generate.
allocate it for something else?
Right, absolutely. It's what we generate in, what we would generate in Rutherford County. We would get a portion of that based on.
Capture a smaller of that than what we're
Based
getting
on what our growth enrollment was.
But the other non-growing systems are not going to be impacted.
No. No.
Yeah, because you've got to get the majority
Right,
vote out of the House and the
that's-
Senate
Yes, sir.
to get it through. So I guess
Right.
I'm
That's
thinking about the 60-something other counties that
Right.
aren't getting a piece increase.
Right.
How do you convince enough of those people to vote for it? Now, fairly, we ought to get it because these counties are the ones that's experiencing.
On that, I think about our growth. I know this is a hard thing to say, but when you take away the hub that's generating the actual financing of the state of Tennessee, and we've seen a lot of impact fees being raised and things of that nature, and you talked about that, you're exactly right, it moves it somewhere else. If we all jump into that same pool together, then we're going to end up slowing the growth down. So I think somehow we have to get that articulated to the rest that this is what's generating the viability of the economy of the state of Tennessee.
Question, Doug. It shows that the 5-year growth, 13.2 and 13.9 for the city and the county. Would this have any effect on the amount of money that the county has to share with the city?
Not on this right here. No.
Okay. So, see, we're going to have to automatically
Yes, right, when you're talking
send
about,
a minimum of
Right.
$15 million out of our budget right now.
Right.
It's going to the
that's
city.
right, you're absolutely right. Well, more than that.
And that's just if we go to the bond market.
Right.
I think that's
So
why-
would,
Right.
if this percentage changed, would we be hit for more coming from the county to the city in any way?
If the percentage
If
change,
the-
if
if the
theirs went
growth-
up, it would come out of the, and Doug, you can speak on this, this is the municipality of Murfreesboro's sales tax, right?
It's gonna, what it is, the state, this new revenue would be coming from the state
State.
portion and come down. Now, when we issue the bond, by statute, we would have to look
Share.
at the ADM and share. But now this revenue would not be shared coming down. It would be a state
Straight.
shared revenue, not property tax or local option sales tax. It would be a state. And this came from, this concept is actually, it was created it replicates, a law that went into effect in 2006. It's the Tennessee River Resort Act, that several of the smaller counties along the Tennessee River, they received a state sharing scheme very similar to this for economic development. So this has been done and is being done right now in numerous counties in Tennessee for another reason, for economic development. This would go back to providing for infrastructure that's needed in Monroe County.
And going back to what Jim asked about the other counties, this sales tax is not taking off. I know it's taking off the full till, but this is actually removing it from what was generated in the county itself.
Right.
The state moves money around a lot. I get all that, but when we're looking at it in terms of what's generated within the boundaries of that municipality.
Any other discussions on that? Just let us know what, if we need to present to full commission for support.
The school board passed this already, and this will go to Health and Net this next
Okay,
week.
all right, good.
For you guys, for the commission.
Okay. All right. Doug, what else you got for us?
The other thing that we noticed that a special census, and of course we're talking about the regular census going on now, but in the last decade, obviously with our state shared revenues, a lot of it's tied to population of the county and the city. Every city in Rutherford County except Eagleville, they did at least one special census in the last decade. Rutherford County, the county did not. The point being is, and I've got, this is a layout of all the state shared revenues and what drives them. And this is, as you can see, numerous ones are tied to population, which is of course tied to what the census says your population is. The cities, of course, recognize that, so they did a special census through state ECD to bring up their, this is what my population is now, thus they get more state shared revenue. The thought would be, and this would be coming from the county commission to okay this, is we would coordinate, Rutherford County would coordinate with the cities within Rutherford County that says when they would do a special census here in 4 years, whatever, that we would all coordinate together, the cities and the county. So the cities would pay for their portion of the census, the county would pay for the unincorporated area of the census. We would all rise it up together. I spoke with ECD a few years ago, and they said they would allow that we would all coordinate together at the same time to do that census. Thus, the county would receive additional state shared revenue because our population went up.
Have a more accurate count, that's all it's about, right?
It's that's not a tax increase, this is getting
Accurate.
more state shared revenue.
Okay.
But that would be something I would suggest that, we could look at doing.
That's an investment on the county commission might choose to invest in the special census.
Exactly.
There's some cost associated. You've got the bodies on the street to count, whatever the process is.
But it would lower our costs if we'd be responsible for the unincorporated portion.
Yeah. A concerted effort.
And I'm sure there's several ways they could, there'd be a way to allocate the cost of census.
We
do it
feel
as a
like
county.
we're undercounted unless it's a special effort.
You and I chatted briefly about, and I think it was in regards to the special census, and the fact that because we are a growth county, perhaps we could lobby for more percentage of the fuel tax.
Well, that'd be different than that. It's this is with a special census, that would be separate than that. That's the third point.
Okay, gotcha.
This might, and as far as the special census, the cities, I don't know if any of the cities did more than one, but, because there's obviously a cost to it, but that could actually be a project, I would assume, for MTSU, they could probably do a modeling based on what our census comes in this coming year, to say, okay, would it be beneficial to do 2 census in the next 10 years based on our track growth? What would be the cost versus the revenue increase that we're going to get?
Does the special census have to be done in the same timing as the federal census, or can it be done we just do a count?
It's anytime. That's
That's what your
between.
point.
That's what
Okay.
my point is.
Okay.
The cities, every city in this county except Eagleville, did a special census in the last decade to increase this state shared revenue portion that they've received.
It could happen as soon as we could trigger the event if we collaborate.
Exactly.
If we could just choose when it starts.
That the county, would be involved in it too.
Probably look at your trends over a few years too. That's where you're talking about getting
Exactly.
tissue, doing a statistical analysis of it and see where you projected growth would be.
Okay.
So we can make it worth your while.
Well, look at this, and I already talked to one of the state reps, based on the gasoline tax, that's kind of holy ground, and the possibilities of changing the formula for the gasoline tax. The smaller counties, they're making that like a bandit.
Yeah.
And, well, like Rutherford County, Wayne County here has almost 200 square mile, or 200 more road miles. And, but they're getting the same amount of gasoline tax that we are. But the state rep that I talked to said it'd be virtually impossible. All these smaller counties are band together and everything. So that's one revenue source that I don't believe stands a chance. Just in my humble opinion.
So,
we could ask the state legislators to approach that, but in all these rural representatives
It
and
certainly
everything.
doesn't appear fair. We have 20 times the population and we're getting the same or less fuel tax money from the state. That doesn't
I think
lopsided.
to Mr. Harney's point, though, I think to get the minority counties to support losing, well, this case, it might be, all right, we'll decrease our revenue so you get more because you're bigger. That would just about not ever get through
Yeah,
the
that's a hard
legislature.
nut to crack.
That one seems especially
That's just so
difficult.
lopsided.
Is there a
This other act may have some different, this may not be a decrease, but that gas tax would be a decrease.
There's been one saving grace, though, as far as state aid, that it was 98% the state and 2% for the county. Okay, that was on a yearly basis, but it has been set in concrete, so the county still will be getting 98%. The state aid roads funded by the state, and the county just only picks up 2%. So that's one benefit, but that's only state aid roads.
Right.
State funded roads.
And that doesn't include the federal highways running through the counties or the county roads. I mean, we're strictly talking about
County owned.
County.
We're jumping into the third point. It's,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, that's a good point.
Excuse me.
No, you're doing good. That's what the point we drive to.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. But the special census, I think it's self-explanatory on that. It's just something between the next 10 years, like I said, that we work with cities.
Murfreesboro did the last one started in 2017 and ended in 2018. I don't know how many they did between 2010 and then, though. I don't know that they did any, but that's.
And their fire department did the census.
The fire department did, their personnel.
They used fire department personnel to do the census.
And volunteers.
And that third one, this third point will not be done, is the gasoline tax. Is, of course, it's the state shared revenue like you guys see. And of course, this is away from the schools. I'm speaking, Mr. Johnson, of course, he represents the road board on this thing. I'm a road commissioner for the eastern side, which represents Christiana. So when I'm speaking, I'm just saying for my district. He represents road board on this thing, but my district encompasses Christiana, which encompasses a lot of growth going on right now. And of course, the thought is, what about funding for roads? As you can see on this distribution chart, the way that fuel tax is different, the way it's given back to the counties than like sales tax, local option. Local option, we go over here and we go to the store right down the street here, we buy a bag of chips. That local option sales tax comes back to Murphy's, where the site is to where you buy it. You go outside and you pump the gas, that local portion of it does not just stay there like sales tax does. As you can see, right down here where it says the motor fuel tax, how it's broken out, that fuel tax, all of it, the state and local portion is sent up to the state and it's put into 3 buckets. One bucket stays at the state to take care of the state roads. The second bucket goes to the cities, and that's prorated not based on situs of where it was pumped here in Murfreesboro, but it's prorated out based on population. The third bucket is the county bucket, and it's prorated out in, as you can see right there, it's a 3-part calculation. 25% is based, or 1/4 is based on population. 1/4 is based on county area, and 1/2 is shared equally, which means that Pickett County, for half of Pickett County, which is the smallest populated county in the state of Tennessee, 50% of that calculation for county fuel tax is the same as Shelby County and Rutherford County. Okay, and that's why I put these 2 comparisons on that second page, is keep in mind how it's prorated based on 25% by population, 25 by land area, not road miles, but land area, and 50% shared equal. As you see, Rutherford County, these are 2018 census estimates, 324,890 people in Rutherford, 16,583 in Wayne. Look at the road miles. We've got way more than they do, and we're growing just fast. All of ours are paved. A lot of theirs are oil and chipped and chert rock, which is a lot cheaper to maintain. But look at the mass, the land mass. They're larger than us. So based on the current calculation, 75% of that calculation favors that rural county, even though we all in this room know what's going on in this county.
Conversely, though, I can't speak to Wayne County, but if we look to our neighbors to the east, in Cannon County, they don't have that many federal or state highways coming through it. So they're not able to collect as much. Their road board has a big challenge in paving their county roads.
True. Based on this right now,
that's probably the only thing they've got that amounts to anything.
True. That's the thing is it's pulling out. It's pulling out the fuel tax and everything that's coming from, once again, the growth counties and stuff along the interstates and going to the rural counties. And they need some help. I mean, I'm not trying to say it, but there was a study done on the state tax sharing in 2004 by Tasser. And they were discussing how state shared revenues happen, and and the distribution to the local communities. And one of the things they put in was fuel tax. Fuel tax to thing. And believe it or not, they've been discussing this since they pointed out in 1972, this General Assembly formed the Tennessee Tax Modernization Reform Commission, something like this. They were looking at where are we going to find this revenue for these needed improvements. So they've been talking about this for 47 years on the fuel tax. And one thing that came out of that study in 1972 was they discussed the TTMRC, that committee, recommended several times related to the distribution of gasoline and motor fuel tax. They said we would recommend a different distribution than it was at that time. And they noted a clear dissatisfaction with the distribution dominated by the requirement that sent 50% of all county highway funds to counties on an equal basis. Of course, they were bringing that back, saying this does not make any rational sense. Just to say Pickett County gets the same as Shelby. This clear discriminated against urbanized areas. They always recognized the problem with the program. So in response, they recommended the funds distributed to counties should be immediately changed to a formula based equally on population, area, and equal shares. And then they said further growth in county highway funds should be distributed on the basis of population. So even back in 1972, they were saying there needed to be a more rational way this funding was going down. And they talked about the usage. I'm a little bit. This is online. You guys go online and pull this. They look more towards usage of roads. So the thought being, of course, is, every county in the state's required to have an approved county road list by the county commission. So we know how many miles they've got. And now, of course, we know the population. So instead of just saying, go forward with a funding that would be based on these three things they have now that they say is not logical, go with, why not, population and road miles. So that way the road miles would help the smaller boys and the population would help urbanized counties like us that are growing. It's 50 on the probation.
The bottom line, the way the formula is now, the 308,000 more people in the Rutherford counties have been paid for Wayne County's roads, and they don't have the demand on the road and the wear and tear. And you're looking at the county road miles, 970.32. You multiply that, any asphalt, because it's 2 lanes. So you're talking about twice as much roads. So, it's unfair, and it's not, but like I said, I don't know, from what I've talked to, really, I don't see any possibility that the gasoline share tax would be changed. Because good and well, the people that be up in arms in the smaller counties and their representatives. So
it's true.
I think that's a moot point on that.
Because I remember from the previous job, the comment was always, well, those bigger counties have a bigger tax base.
Exactly right.
And so, but it goes back to the comment before was, we're driving the urban areas, the growth counties are driving the way our tax are structured in the state with consumption taxes. And a lot of that consumption tax goes in state share revenue out to the smaller counties. When you keep putting a local tax burden on the growth counties, that's Laffer economics, it slows down everybody.
And one thing to be considered too, as far as the infrastructure is concerned, the sites for the schools, there's not any great parcels of land out here that would be accessible without any infrastructure change. And the highway department, I'm talking in particular about the Christiana location out there. The roads out there, Sledge and Plainview and all of them, they were adequate for the situation it is now, but they won't be adequate for the school that's coming online in 21. Okay, the school board, they do the best they can of finding the land that will be suitable for them to do what they need to do. Okay, so, but the infrastructure, the highway department, Greg and the road board agreed that I think don't quote me on this and hold me to it, but I think it's gonna be somewhere around $6 million that's gonna be coming out of the ending fund balance for the highway department. But by the same token, that's taxpayers' money too. So, this is a one-time deal that can't be continued on as far as draining the ending fund balance for the highway department, so. But that situation out there is hopefully going to be taken care of, and maybe it can be online when the school comes online, because it's just not capable of having a school bus on both lanes of that road and everything else out there.
Mr. Chairman.
Good.
Hey, so, man, I'm just going to jump in. So, y'all have expressed the realities. Here are some avenues we can take. One of which is 47 years old.
Yeah.
So I've been in the construction world, and I'm now have the privilege of being in the elected official world. And we cannot go back and talk about the 47-year-old fix. It's incumbent upon us now to what can we do in Rutherford County unique from other counties in addition to those great ideas. So I want to bring us back to, we've got a private act that's getting support from the House bill and Senate bill. It's going to hit some obstacles of bringing in the minority counties. We've got a gas tax redistribution that's been a very logical argument, but it's been 40-something years of stumbling through. Just government slow, I guess, as it should be. So if I can just kind of bring us back, we can pursue those. At the same time, in Rutherford County, we're going to have to do something different as an intro, because when we do that, what we just described, the only result is, let's increase property tax. That's the only result. That's the only avenue or revenue that we have, essentially. And so while we're waiting on the legislature and good ideas of getting support for bills, if I may, Chairman, what can we do locally in revenue production? And can the development world, home building world, real estate world contribute to that in a way that's articulated by or supported by or created by the real estate development and home building world? Can you take and run with that?
Yeah, that leads to our next set of conversation.
Yeah. How do we get local buy-in, contribution, brainstorming, resulting in revenue? Is that the question?
That is the question. That's the question of the day. Before we leave your expertise, Doug, and I know you guys, and I appreciate you guys' time today, there was one other conversation that you and I had briefly. Is there a potential via referendum, if we so choose, to do a half-cent fuel tax specific for Rutherford County?
There is, the law allows for that. That's not new, that's been on the books,
Okay.
that they can do that.
I mean, I know that's
It's
more-
never been done, I don't
I
believe.
mean, that's a
but
user
it's-
tax. That's got nothing to do with development and anything like that.
No.
But that would be passerbys, non-residents, anybody that stops and buys fuel in Rutherford County could pay a half-cent extra fuel tax that could go specifically to an account that'll be set up for road improvement or capital improvement,
I
whatever.
can't
you want.
remember the amount, but yeah, there's general law that authorizes resolution or referendum for that, a local option.
Bill, if I may, could I ask Doug to do a little bit of research on that and send us some information on that?
So that would be a dedicated fuel tax just for that was what I was going to ask about.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of rule against?
Yeah. We think there's a possibility there that we could
Because I think Williamson County does.
establish a special.
I think
But
they do.
the hue and cry from the state increase, it'd be a hard road to hoe to do a local referendum to residents of Rutherford County, because
I don't know.
I mean, nothing's impossible.
I think everybody's had enough of the
You drive
road
around town in
situation.
congestion, I would pay a half a cent more than
Hey, I
easy
don't have
road.
any problem with
What
that, but
about
a lot
the,
of people will have.
wheel tax? I mean, I know we were collecting on that.
Yeah, it's on my agenda.
Okay. I was just wondering, I'm thinking, well, if if we get rid of if we end up getting rid of the emissions thing like we've been talking about for a couple of years, what does that leave? That leaves, I mean, tags can go down or they can go up.
I got the numbers on that. I'll be happy to share with you.
But again, with the gas tax, the benefit, I think, to us as property, that live here is that we're blessed with geography. With so many people, so many vehicles coming through our county.
Our tourism.
That's a whole lot more palatable than any of the other.
Let them pay for some of the bill.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I was heavy involved in Chamber of Commerce on the board level. And I had to step down because I became an elected official. And one of the first things as an elected official was I was a proponent for the increase to hotel and motel tax. And I thought I was going to get carried out tar and feathered. And they all said, I'll make sure you get defeated in your next election. And lo and behold,
You won by a bigger margin.
well, no, but lo and behold, nobody flinched. With the sales of property tax, it's been a boon, right? And who's paying those? Yeah, some of our businesses are, but it's the out-of-towners. It's people coming to stay. Tourism is at its all-time high. People are not flinching at paying the extra hotel motel tax. And it's the same way what we're talking about. Let the people that are coming in pay for the roads they're using, emergency services and everything else. To me, that's a no-brainer. But so if you'll give us some information on that, on how we could put that in play if we chose to do that. Okay.
Well, and is there any way to calculate what kind of revenue that would generate if it was a half a cent or a cent? Or
Yeah, there is. Somebody somewhere at TDOT has got the fuel purchases by county. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a great CTAS project.
It'd be simple math.
It's not that hard to do.
It would.
Yeah.
That's part of their.
Well, it would let you know how much more.
Doug and Bill, do you guys have anything else from a school standpoint? All right, I appreciate you guys' time. You're welcome to stay, but we'll move on to part B.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the effort there.
All right.
Appreciate it.
My comments were just, how can you build on that?
Yes.
In addition to that. So, thanks, Bill.
All right, thank you.
You mentioned the wheel tax. I want everybody to listen up. We paid like $9 now for this emissions thing. All right, let's say that goes away. It's supposed to go away sometime.
About a year and a half.
Okay, so let's say it goes away. So let's say we add a $20, round numbers, a $20 increase to our wheel tax, which is really only $11 because we're throwing the $9 we pay, so $11 increase. It's really 20, it's called $11. So $20, a $20 a year increase to wheel tax. And if that $20 was dedicated strictly to road or infrastructure improvement, that $20 per year would net us approximately $5 million, which would pay for the trouble we're having with the improvements to Christiana School, almost. So $5 million, a $20 increase in wheel tax would net us $5 million per year.
Does that require a referendum?
No, we can do that right now. Making a motion? All right. We can't do that. This committee cannot make.
Chairman, can we, in addition to that doesn't require a referendum, you said if we dedicate it to infrastructure, do we have to change the private act or whatever?
The formula?
Can we dictate where it goes?
It's already, the wheel tax is already broken into three parts. Right. And we, as the commission dictates the percentage of where that goes.
Okay.
I will have to, that's such an easy question, I'm going to let my county attorney answer that question. But we can dictate, from what I understand, where and the percentage we want that to go. And if we want to create because part of that money is already roads, we could perhaps create a fourth account that could be strictly new roads. Because I want you all to remember, the monies that Road Superintendent Brooks gets per year from property taxes has nothing to do with building new roads. I want you all.
Less than 1%.
Yeah, it's maintenance. It is maintenance, capital M maintenance.
His state mission, his mission, the superintendent's the road board's mission by statute or policy is maintain roads, not build new roads. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Right.
The only thing we can do,
keep that in mind.
the only thing we do is involved with improvement. That's what this $6 million basically is going to be doing for the Christiana area.
So the
And
personnel and the equipment and the funds,
That comes
his
from-
existence is for the purpose of maintenance.
Right.
So do we need to specify that any new road tax goes towards the improvement of roads or construction of roads rather than maintenance? Because, I think what makes a lot of people distrusting of government is when they say, okay, we'll pass this new tax and it's for this, and then the money is just deducted, that used to go from the general fund is suddenly shrunk, and this is just added into it. So there's really no net increase to what is being used, and I think that any legislation that is passed has to be very specific into how that money is going to be allocated in order for it to be palatable. Everybody in the county agrees our road situation is certainly getting worse and worse. And if we're going to have to pay more money, let's use it for the road situation instead of buying new trucks and
Well, and
whatever.
before Nick chimes in, I'm going to give him another couple of seconds.
It's kind of an easy answer.
To process his thoughts.
I'll have to look at it. I've got to look at our private act and also the Wheel Tax TCA.
Okay. Because also as a developer, if I'm going to get hit with some kind of a fee, assessment, whatever you want to call it, I would like to know that if I'm going to have to pay X amount of number per new roof, that's going to be spent on the roads that are pretty close to my development, not necessarily 20 miles away in some other burb of the county. I want some kind of a agreement or knowledge or assurance that if I'm going to give you this amount of money per every roof, if that money you're asking me to give or going to assess me is going to be at least in some kind of a radius of the roads you want me to improve. I think we can work that out.
And I think that's great for adequate facilities tax impacts. Development tax is what we call it here. How can you do that with a wheel tax? Here you've got the city and you've got the county. We're talking about building county roads, but are the people in the city going to say, we want to keep the money in the city? Or how are you going to split that up? And you can't very well say, okay, you can't divide the wheel tax up by districts.
No. A wheel tax to me would go to a specific infrastructure, I'll even call it new infrastructure fund. And that would be for new roads, new bridges, new drainage projects, and that's what I would limit infrastructure to. I wouldn't limit it, I wouldn't expand infrastructure to include radio towers and any electrical. I'm talking about moving cars, moving planes, trains, automobiles.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about. What's causing the congestion in the roadways is what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Any new tax or any tax at all should be directly related to what is being taxed and what the money's been used for, in my mind. A wheel tax is for moving roads.
Right.
Moving cars down roads.
Yeah.
Could I address that just a little bit? Okay, I know the county commission has pretty good power, but the way the formula is now, it's 40% for the school system, 30% for the general fund, and 30% for the highway department. So how would we go about changing that formula? Could we have the legal authority to change that formula? Or would that have to go through the legislature some way to, because designating, how would you, I don't know what system would have to be set up to designate the $20 alone. So see, out of that $20, only $8 for that goes to the school system, and the other $12 goes to the general fund and the highway department. So you know, that's,
We have to look at it.
Yeah, see, I would, me personally, I would want any increase in the wheel tax to be 100%.
All roads.
To roads.
Yeah.
Leave the current percentage as it is, and this be a specific add-on for roads, or infrastructure, we'll call it.
New infrastructure.
Yeah, new infrastructure.
what kind of accounting nightmare would that be?
I'm sorry.
I see.
That might be a question for Lisa Dolan.
Oh.
But I think the idea.
Don't bring a lawyer into accounting.
Yeah. I didn't go to math school.
I don't know, I mean,
Yeah, I think it sounds like a simple.
You first need to see if you got the authority to even reallocate the distribution under the private act. So that's why I think I need to pull the language out of the TCA.
I'm not sure the private act tells us what
There might
the
be
allocation
limitations
is.
on your ability under state law. There might be directives on how the county commission has to allocate that wheel tax. In other words, and by the way, you always need to have some sort of rational nexus. Doug Bodery talked about that. So could you put that into some sort of fund totally unrelated to anything having to do with infrastructure? You know, for paying payroll for employees of, you know, this building here that has nothing to do with public works. How far does that go? So I need to look at the language of the TCA, and I'll pull the private act, and Mike, I can get back to you on that.
Okay, all right. So let's get to Phil's passion. We brought, you guys were invited here for a very specific cause. We want your input. You've had an hour now to hear the challenges that we have. Not that they're new. This is not a new story for you guys. So you tell us what you see out in your world, how you address these issues in your world, and if you have any suggestions for us.
We have these discussions with so many cities, and it seems like everybody always goes for the impact fee. But, you know, like in my case, you know, when I sold my house, somebody from out of state moved in. I built a new house in Murfreesboro, so I paid the tax, they didn't. I'm getting ready to move again. Somebody from out of state's moving in. I'll pay it again. But I mean, the fee is going to be passed on to the home buyer. So I mean, you know, it's just the reality. I mean, me and John have talked about this a lot over the last year or two, and I mean, to us, probably the smartest thing to do. His residency's in Florida, and they have a transfer tax there, which I know our legislator, you know, our legislature would have to change the way our state law is. But you know, that way, I mean, any transfer of property will pay something. And I mean, you know, I've worked for a city before. When things slowed down and those impact fees weren't coming in, that revenue you were counting on is gone. And then you're sitting here scratching your head, what are we going to do? You know, transfer tax, everybody pays something. Commercial, industrial, residential, everybody pays.
If somebody brings in 500 jobs, they pay the tax, along with the 500 people that move here.
Any transfer of piece of property.
Job.
Whether it's an existing home or a new.
Right.
on a smaller scale, a large percentage of the homeowners associations, they have a transfer fee.
Right. Yes.
Anytime it's changed over. Where I live, it's a $300 transfer fee every time a unit is sold.
That's right, and that's to pay for capital
And
improvements in the
it
neighborhood.
hadn't curtailed the sale of units in our area.
It won't.
That one may just go to the HOA, then the capital improvement. In addition to that, there's often an additional capital improvement, so two fees every time a roof transfers.
That's right.
You know, and the city's done some special assessments if they've gone and put in roads like St. Andrews Drive, and then, you know, the builder comes in as they develop, they pay back, you know, pay the city back. But, you know, all in all.
Sewer department does the same thing.
Right.
If they'll extend sewer.
Any of that.
Give a sewer impact fee.
That's my big problem with the traffic shed thing is you'll have the first developer pays to improve the roads, and then every other landowner along there benefits from it without paying anything.
Exactly. It's not.
And then you can only pay that property owner. I mean, you're not going to take the whole hit because, you know, development costs have gone way up. People are only going to pay so much for a lot. So, you know, like you said, I mean, you don't want to be the first guy there.
Yeah, and it discourages because nobody wants to be the first one.
Because when you get to close with that landowner, you'll be like, this is all I can pay you for this piece. So, I mean, they're taking a hit on the land.
Right.
I drive on St. Andrews all the time, and I didn't pay 1 red cent for that road. I appreciate that.
Well, it also has the opposite effect too. If you go the other option, say you can only build 150 houses on this road, and you do that, then you've shut down every other landowner and devalued their property because they can't sell it for squat.
And you're only going to pay what you pay for. It's only word. That's like when people call and, you ask them how much they want, they tell you, and they, not to insult you, but, we can only pay you what it's worth to us.
Right. To develop.
Do we have any idea how much money, talking about this, anybody have any idea how much the value of real estate transfers are?
How much the tax would be to transfer if it was a
Well,
transfer?
how much
real estate transfers in Rutherford County a year?
Yeah, and then
You
say
could look
if it
at
was
the
a half
transactions
a
per
percent
year.
or
We
something.
were out at
like that, right?
MTAR at a meeting, and the lady that was conducting the meeting indicated there were 991 transactions in a pretty short window. And our average transaction was probably $350. I know commercial could be.
I just tell you, Rutherford County's 2019 versus 2018 closings for Q1, Q2, and Q3. Q1 was 1347 in 2019 versus 2018 at 1364. Q2 was 1962 versus 2001 in 2018, and Q3 right now 2048 versus 1962.
Are those that your numbers, are those the number of transactions?
Those are closings. Those are actually closings.
That could
We
be
don't know
commercial,
New and
that's,
existing.
Yeah.
commercial, residential, that's the works.
See,
Well, this is just, this would just be residential.
That's just
Well, the big piece you
Right.
mentioned, is you sell one apartment complex for 60 million.
Right.
That number is huge compared to 40 houses selling.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's got to be on the
By
transfer
the door.
tax of every transaction.
Right.
Because a REIT coming in here and buying an apartment complex, they'll ingest that as part of the deal. But you gain a lot more revenues off the non-residential transactions than you do, in a growth county.
Right.
When things stop, whether it's, whatever it is, it's going to slow down, whether it's selling houses or the economy slows. But across the board, transfer tax on all transactions.
Yeah.
would
It's
be the way
fair
to
and
go.
equitable, that's
Well, it makes it
equitable.
Well, I mean, if you got
A lot
350
smaller.
people living in an apartment complex, and everybody says apartment complexes don't pay their fair share of taxes, they do, they pay more than their fair share.
Right.
So they're all 40% assessment. But that's the way to rise a bunch of votes at the same time, and it's not necessarily loading it just on individual single-family homeowners.
So there's 1,400, in the, per quarter, Jim, there's 12, 13, 14, 1,500 transactions.
Per quarter.
Per quarter, plus the commercial, or this non-single family transaction. But I'm sure we could come up with, but it's going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, I know the popular thing to do is the tax developer, but how many people are originally from Rutherford County? Everybody's always wanting to keep everybody out, but so many thousand people have moved in here. It's like, I've moved in, but nobody else can now.
Not close the
So,
gate.
Yeah. So,
But I could see Costco would pay the tax when they want to open a store, and, it's huge.
And just-
The developer's gonna pay it when he buys the land, the developer's or the purchaser of the home, or the home builder's gonna pay it when he buys the lot, the home buyer's gonna pay it again. You've got an opportunity for a pretty steady revenue stream, I would think.
On this transaction fee, you're saying? this-
Yeah, transfer tax, and they just make it a small sliver, I don't know what a small is, 1/10% or 1/4%, something,
So just, I'm just going to point out the obvious, though. That is a potentially decade away. Is it not?
Yeah, it's like 6 to 8 years.
That's to get a private act, and so I'm just sharing that.
And has that not come up before?
It has.
Early 2000s or something?
I think the transfer tax did come up, and I think there was a lot of opposition to it. And I think that at that point in time, that there was opposition, I think, from the real estate community, from the banking community as well, I think opposed that. I don't know all the reasons why. But, again, just like impact fees and all these other things, we don't want anything going up, but we're going to have to come to some conclusion of what are we willing to swallow worse than something else.
And which industry's willing to swallow it?
And, well, yeah,
Partially,
but,
to
you know,
some degree.
but with what concerns me, and I think the home builders and also realtors are in agreements that with these impact fees that drive it, the total cost of the home up, the new home up, that pushes that many more people out of owning a home. And we're big into home ownership. And so when that happens, you know, there's that fewer people able to own a home, and they've got to go to something else, you know. And I think that's the American dream.
Hence all the apartments all going
Yeah,
up all over the
and that drives up.
And in the big picture, that development tax doesn't really raise that much money.
No,
Development taxes never do.
It's $3 million a year or so, and it went down to
It's a drop in the
900,000.
bucket.
Okay, so you're what I'm hearing, some people in the industry say is that contribution from the industries is palpable to these folks in the room, the few that are here, if it's equitable.
Yeah.
Trying to pick the broadest spectrum. We're dumping on the homeowner or the property tax owner, property tax. If we dump it on just a per lot fee, only the new dwellings are going to contribute.
The money's so small.
And it is,
For what you
it is
need.
small, yeah. Again, I just need to summarize it. I mean, I just heard this, some people in the industry advocate for a transfer fee.
And we're on both sides. We
As
got a real estate side, we got
yeah.
a development side, we got a home builder side. So it's going to hit me either way.
Yeah, okay. But what I heard was this equitable across, instead of picking.
Mr. Harney addressed it there a while ago. I guess the most equitable way would be any real estate transfer.
Yeah.
A percentage wise, or maybe would be more palatable, you know, something that would be.
That was part of the inequity when we started the development tax
Right.
25 plus years ago. The home builders bought into it because when it was $750, we bought into it because it was going to go to emergency services, roads, and maybe one education. But when it got to the commission floor, it went into the general fund.
How much goes to the general? I'm sorry, excuse me.
Then it got raised again to $1,500. So I think from the home builder perspective, if you're going to tell us something, put it where you're going to tell us. Use it where you're going to earmark it. Don't tell us it's going to go to something, and then on the floor it gets changed all of a sudden. I think I'm in agreement with Beavers here. The developers in this community, the builders, they're going to get hit with something. I don't see how you don't do it. The last time that the transfer tax got hit, the realtors really gave us push. I think the builders bought into it pretty much.
I think.
But and I'm a broker too. But the realtors really gave us pushback at the state level. When that happened, and you know what happens in these, and whatever you decide, as long as it's equitable and everybody's paying their fair share, I think the home builders will get behind you and they'll call the state reps and the state senators and they'll support whatever we decide or you decide. The issue that I have, or not I have, but I think as an industry we have, is when we're paying $1,500 or $750 for a house when I'm building a 1,400 square foot house over here and I got a 6,000 foot house over here. Well, they're paying the same. That's not equitable. Now, I don't know if legally you can do that, if you can put a percentage per square foot or an amount per square foot. But that makes it more equitable.
It's a privilege tax, but I think
Williamson,
there's.
I think that's our
The only equitable way would be a percentage basically on the value or the real estate transfer. You know,
Well, if
it
you're
was
based
$1 million.
on dollar values of the transfer.
Correct.
Just like, you know, deed of trust fees or anything else that go down when you record, or if you record the deed. But I've never seen, just speak to it from the commercial side, I've never seen anybody on the larger commercial transactions that come to the closing and say, I'm not going to close on this X piece of commercial property because the transfer tax is there. It's just part of the closing cost.
Right.
Now, it will affect somebody trying to buy a $250,000 house that's trying to come up with enough money to close and are barely making it.
Exactly.
And then if there's another $500 added on there, that can push some people out.
And we already have an issue with affordable housing.
Right.
In our,
But when you're tying it to everything, who's gonna carry the freight is not gonna be the single-family homeowners.
Well,
Now, what you gotta do, and I'll shut up here in just a second, but when we had the fuel tax increase, I'm not sure if half, but several of our state legislators voted against it. When I started lobbying TDOT a couple of years ago about some new road improvements for inside Rutherford County, pretty high up in TDOT said, well, we're just not going to get real aggressive in your county when over half your legislative delegation voted against the increase in the gas tax.
Right.
So we've got to get the legislators on board day one to say, yeah, I'll get behind this. And then you've got to have a PR campaign that makes people understand who's really going to be affected the most, who's really going to pay the tax, or the lion's share of the tax. Because it's a PR campaign to get it over the line, private act-wise, if that's what it takes. But if you don't have the legislators on board right off the get-go, you're not going to get there.
Well, the other thing I would mention is if you set up something like a transfer tax, would it be in lieu of, would you take away the current development tax and replace it with?
I think you would have to.
Something like that, but that would make it more palatable.
You have to.
I think you would have to.
Because that would eliminate, that would take the price of a house down $1,500.
I think you would have to take it off. I think it's the way it's written, because you talked about adequate facilities tax and all that. Because I think you got to have one or the other. I don't think you can have just tax.
I'm going to make a statement that I wouldn't have made 6 years ago. Before I got elected, I would have just jumped all over the heck yeah. But when I hear it now, and I've met with every department head, I've looked at every budget, every department, and it's like our businesses. All right, let's take $3 million out of capital improvement, which is development tax. I mean, it's hard to take out. I mean, we're talking about increasing revenue.
You'd have to replace
You'd be replacing it.
It would have to generate that plus.
You would set the rate.
I would say
set the rate to replace.
I see what you're saying.
You need more than $3 million.
Replace the $3 million, but it would have to generate more.
Yes.
We claim as business people and elected officials that this is a revenue problem. But I hear what you're saying. I heard it
Different ear.
Decrease
You're saying
your budget.
Yeah, I'm just saying set the rate to replace that plus whatever additional.
You need more than $3 million.
lose the 1,500 and build the
nothing,
1,500 in your transfer.
But you're spreading it out.
Let me respond to Jason. Just said $3 million is nothing, and I agree.
Compared to
It
what
really
you
is, yeah, because we're talking. But at the same time, if we had a $3 or $4 million revenue stream that's somewhat consistent, earmarked is important for Mike and I and Paul, earmarked. $3 or $4 million in a couple of buckets would make a significant difference, because we're talking about just taking little bites out of some issues we have. If Greg Brooks had $3 or $4 million, I don't want to speak for Greg because he's got a staff of people that are maintaining roads. We can't add more work to him. We'd have to hire more people. We don't. But if he had $3 or $4 million, for instance, coming in every year, we could start earmarking this road this year, and we know in 5 years out we're going to put $3 million into another road. The $3 or $4 million hits actually help too. So I just, as we make these decisions, we might not necessarily be getting the $10, $15, $20 million per year revenue. That may not be the solution. It may be
trying to put our needs in perspective and looking at the Williamson County traffic study that you guys also got copies of. They were looking at needing $371 million over 20 years. And that really wasn't doing any, that was doing some, 5 or 6 major roads that were long roads and they knew were going to be high growth areas. But that kind of puts a benchmark on what the number is. We're talking, doing the math on that, $16 or $18 million a year is what they thought that their needs were going to be. I mean, do we kind of think that's where we're going? We really don't have an idea of how much money we need.
Were the closings, residential closings, you said not
Yeah.
19,000? Was it, it's about
15 a quarter. average.
15
Yeah,
15 a quarter. It's like $450,000 a quarter.
Yeah,
If you use 1,500 as an average.
If you do 350, it's about 500 something million. You said the average.
Okay,
350, right?
500 million
Yeah. And for-
gross transactions on the single-family side, or the residential side only. They do a percentage.
And that's just residential. If we do, I mean, you do this, you do commercial, I mean, you do
What's
everything.
1% of that?
$5 million.
That's a lot of money.
That's a big,
I need an engineer to tell me.
It's a lot more than your attorney.
Okay, so that's 5.
Hey, can I, for just, if you look at the city's major thoroughfare plan, it's a 25-year plan. I think it goes out to 2040 right now. $1 billion. So that's the top money, and you've got way more roads to do than they do. Now, you can build yours to a different standard. Yours don't necessarily have to be curb and gutter. A rural section, that's going to drive the cost down. But I mean, that's what their plan was, $1 billion. So your number's probably somewhere between Williamson counties and Murfreesboro's. So it's a big number. $3 million a year, it's going to take a long time to get to $1 billion.
Yeah, agreed.
So that transfer tax should bring in a lot more than that.
A lot more.
Yeah, but Jim, the point we've got some energy needs to be put into what is our target. We're having a brainstorm here, and one of the outcomes is, geez, we need to get a target. 10 million a year is it 4 million? Is it 20?
Well, let me, hey Doug, we got the go-ahead from the mayor, right, to do our comprehensive plan? Do you, in your crystal ball, I know we are just getting started. In your crystal ball, do you have a financial number that you willing to share, or is it way too early to?
Are you talking about the cost to do the plan?
No, just
Future road.
the kind of 20-year plan, what kind of money we need? Okay, all right. It was an unfair question, I just thought you might have
I can make up a number.
That's a good point, man. That kind of gives us a scope.
I like that transfer tax idea. Do we have anything else?
So, Nick, the transfer,
Yeah, I know a little bit about that. I can comment on that. So I think the county attempted to pass via a private act a real estate transfer tax about 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. And it actually got involved in a suit here locally. And I don't know the exact specifics, and I haven't pulled the file, but the Chancery Court here struck it down as invalid. I don't know on what basis, but it was struck down. There was a subsequent lawsuit later dealing with taxpayers that had been assessed that real estate transfer tax, and they wanted to get paid back their money, I think after it was struck down. Now, none of that really matters, apart from the fact that we passed it once and it was struck down and we don't have it now. And the import of that is because we didn't have it in place before the passage of the County Powers Relief Act, we can't now go and do it.
It has to be overturned.
Now,
The state's got to change it.
I don't know the propriety of trying to get another private act passed by the General Assembly, because they're the only ones that can allow us to pass local legislation that would otherwise conflict with already existing state law, or alternatively, if it would simply require a full amendment to the County Powers Relief Act to make it explicit that local governments could pass things like a real estate transfer tax. Now, those private acts that we had in effect, like the development tax, because it was in effect prior to the passage of the County Powers Relief Act, it's still valid. It's still, and that we do that now, anyway. Now, those are all different than the adequate facilities tax, which me and Doug looked at that, and we don't think that the county has that in effect right now anyway. We don't tax for it, I don't think.
It looked like that when they did the development tax back in the 90s, 96, there were two different private acts that were also approved by the state allowing the county to collect the adequate facilities tax. It doesn't appear that either of those two acts were ever ratified by the county commission, and it would have had to have been done before the end of that year, 96, for it to happen. So they did ratify the development tax, which is what we collect now, but the two adequate facilities taxes, they had one for commercial development, one for residential. But neither one of those appear to have been ratified.
We think that's the answer.
So, as I recall, the reasoning they adopted the development tax was the commission would have greater flexibility on where the money could be allocated. So if it was an adequate facilities tax, there had to be a direct nexus to what that money was being used on. The development tax, they could kind of filter it off in other places. And they liked that idea, and they decided to go with development.
And you're right, the adequate facilities tax it was 40 cents per square foot, right? And it was broken down into, I think it was 40 cents for, 25 cents for schools, 10 cents for law enforcement, 5 cents for roads or something like that. So that's how, you're right, that's how it was broken down for that. So that's.
Let me tell you something else that's kind of aggravating, which all us chickens in the room will think, man, why didn't somebody think about this in 1996 during the Powers Act? Mr. Harney talked about his TDOT fight with the fuel tax, and I was one of those soldiers for the fuel tax as well. You know, one of the arguments was the fuel tax was never indexed. It should have been indexed since day one for inflation. Well, the development tax was not indexed for inflation either. If it would have been, I had Lisa Nolan run the numbers, that $1,500 would now be, in today's dollars, about $1,750. And the difference over the years lost revenue of inflation would have been $17 million we'd have had in the kitty. So
In addition, 17.
we would have had an additional $17 million if we'd have indexed it for inflation. So in today's dollars, that 1,500 is 1,700 some change. So one of those head scratchers, like, why didn't somebody think of this deal?
One other
Hey, you were on the commission back then, weren't you?
Right. That would be no.
Okay. All right.
One other little thing, source of revenue, do you have any idea what, now this is way out in the left field, but a man has hounded me, I've lost a few hairs over about a county fair and things of that nature. Can you just pull off the top of your head what the revenue from the Wilson County Fair has brought in?
I can find out real quick.
What I'm getting at is try to attract something like that, like Bonnaroo. They've sold this thing now, and they're having all kind of venues up there now. And they just had an event up there this last weekend, 25,000 people converged in. You know, bring them in here, let them spend the money, and then get the heck out of Dodge. You know, going back home. You know, so if you got to figure that.
I've sent a text.
Oh, you said, okay. But, I mean, that may be a little bit off the bubble or something or whatever, but we could try to recruit something like that, you know, it'd be a revenue source.
Support our Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry?
We got to support our Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce.
All right. We are approaching an hour and a half, and I appreciate everybody's time and effort. And so let's sum up, and we may have to invite you all again for part 2. So let's see if we can get some closure on what we talked about today, particularly on the developer side. The common theme seems to be the transfer tax, but what Phil and I's concern and Paul's concern is that could take many, many years to get in, put that ball into play. So what can we do now? Doug just kind of told us, and Nick just kind of said, oh, I've got to look into it, but with our predecessors who sadly didn't have verbiage in play prior to the Powers Act that left us any feet in the door, it looks like we can hardly do anything without our legislative friends changing some language for us.
I see the wheel tax as a fairly low-hanging fruit. Not a huge dollar amount, but it's something that we get started with. And we've got the gas tax that's kind of a midterm. Maybe the transfer tax is long-term, but the time to start long-term projects is now.
Yeah, I understand. My issue with the wheel tax, not that it's an issue, is that that's just more tax on the people, really. It's a user tax. Property tax is a user tax. I'm trying to think of what, is there something the development community can help us with now as we're putting more houses out farther away on substandard roads? What can we do? Can they help us? And we've talked about some things, but I'm not sure we're any farther down the road than we were around half ago.
Build along state highways.
Yeah.
It's about,
Yeah, quit buying cheap land in rocks out with bad roads.
You can do that. People are still gonna drive on those bad roads. So they still got to get to the schools that we're building out on the bad roads. I mean, like the better term, I use multiple roads a day, and I don't live on any of those state roads. I live on a gravel road, and I still drive on those. You wouldn't get anything out of me if you did that. You wouldn't get anything out of other people. I mean, that's why we have a major thoroughfare plan. We're talking about how people get across the county and the north, south, east, west, and it's not just on the state road. It's going to be all these back roads that we call them back roads or inadequate roads. They're collectors or arterials now. They were wagon trails at one time, but they function differently now. So I don't think that's the answer. I mean, if you look traditionally, even in the city or the county, where roads have been improved, it's where developments went. Development's driven where those improvements have went. So it's not, we're going to build a road and it'll come. That's not happening. Look at Halls Hill Pike.
Seems like we need to work on getting the state to untie your hands a little bit.
Yeah. And that is going to need some help from you all.
I've already started talking to some.
Because we keep getting spanked and saying, you'll never get that done because the lobby just for the home builders are way too strong, and they'll never let that happen.
Home builders, I think, would need support.
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised this time around.
Okay. Because our other option is to say, well, we just got to put a moratorium on building for a while. And that's been talked about.
And we understand that, and that's why we're, it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah. We're in a pickle. We're in a pickle.
You and everybody else around Nashville. You're not alone.
Yeah, but see, they have the ability to raise fees. We can't.
Yeah, that's true.
Jim, I hate to be in opposition, but I don't, in my finite mind, I don't think that the transfer deal you're talking about, I don't believe that's as far down the road as you would think. From the temperature that I get from the county commission, it could be a trade-off with the development tax. I think that would be a good selling point, but it would have to, just like Phil said, it would have to
more than compensate.
Yeah, it had to more than compensate.
Your revenue would be
the loss of development.
Yeah, I think your revenue opportunity is way
and I think the Realtors Association and the developers would be on board pretty good with that. Of course, it would take the legislative act to change that around to whatever. But I don't think that it's that far down the road. What do you think, Phil?
Just one comment on that, just for the commissioners here to think about that. If you're going to tie them into both, and in the same sort of private act that you send up to the General Assembly, you're also asking to repeal your current private act, and say for whatever reason you get pushback from the state and they don't pass your new private act, you will have brought yourself out of the parameters to continue charging the development tax and also be left with not having a new approved real estate transfer tax. That's a possibility. In other words, you have to get the state to, you might want to weigh your cards there, and if you're going to be able to get that passed before you go and invalidate your current private act, you have authority.
Well, one would have to.
There would have to
be one's contingent upon the other.
Yeah, to be contingent.
If possible,
yeah.
And I think you will get, the home builders, and I think we could work with the realtors to get their support.
And stipulate.
It's got to come from somewhere.
And stipulate and hold the feet to the fire. Stipulate what the revenue's going for. Infrastructure, schools, et cetera, and make sure that it was set in concrete, you know.
We would be the advocates for that as much
Well, I
as.
think you personally need to call the legislative delegation in.
There's your.
That's what we were just
And have a
chatting
meeting with them now,
That's what we were just
way
talking about.
before the next session.
I've talked to a couple of them, and I think they're receptive.
We had the legislative delegation here at the wheel tax year, it was a year and a half ago. And they, to a person, said, we do not support any new taxes. We vote no across the board. So we got to get those folks.
Well, I mean, that's where you start.
I agree.
If they won't back you up, there's no even going to the
It could not function. That was my concern, Paul, is John's point is if we don't, and Jason, if we don't,
Sure.
we need to start with
And the
that
pushback could be
delegation.
because of the past with home builders and the realtors. I mean, that could be the pushback.
Okay.
So how can we, who's got the intel with that group to get them here in a couple of weeks with this same group?
Some of the legislators.
Yeah.
Well,
About the mayor?
Harney, what about you? You can't hide money, man, come on.
Now, you must be looking around here.
So we would like to invite the delegation here. So
steering committee.
we need to start with them.
Well, we're talking about a countywide tax. I think the way, I mean, it benefits the whole county. I think it's a combination of getting Bill Ketron.
Yes.
And all the mayors.
Yes.
Of municipalities to reach out to the legislative delegation and say, we need to have a meeting. Not public, I'm not talking about a big public meeting, but let's go meet one night and talk through the idea. And you gotta have, all their buy-in, but you need to have it in an atmosphere that everybody can sort of talk frank about the good and the bad and the ugly about getting it done.
Yeah.
But if you can bring to the table that the real estate industry would be behind it, the development industry would be behind it, and the great point made, if you can do a trade-off and say, we can take the development tax away if we bring this up, but you're right, we can't have something where you repeal one and don't get the other one passed. But private acts usually get carried if the delegation from that county wants it, it gets passed. I mean, Bedford County just passed one in the last year or so, taking the hotel motel tax away from the chamber and giving it back to the city. And John T. Bobo told me about the other day, and it went through like greased lightning. It was a little struggle going on between the chamber and the city of Shelbyville, which is a shame, but I mean, it went right through. But the delegation got behind it, boom, it got through.
All right. Well, I'm going to chat with this group, and we're going to do, and I'm going to chat with the mayor, and we'll see if we can't get as quick as humanly possible, because we're up against a January, I mean, really, right now is when you need to be chatting. You got to be chatting now to get for 2020 going. So as soon as humanly possible, try and get as many of those folks at the table and chat. And if we need you guys to say, yeah, we support that.
I'd like to hear from Mayor. I want to hear Hunter's opinion on. He's been quiet.
Hunter has been. All he's done is saying there's an average of quarter 1, 2, 3. That's all he's done.
No, I was actually doing some research while y'all were talking. So Tennessee does have one though of a transfer tax. It's 37 cents of $100. So for every $100, they get 37 cents on the state, which on an average $250,000 house is $925.
So what do you think the realtors group associations, if you had to take their temperature, what kind of reaction?
From a government standpoint, they're gonna
from this proposal.
Yeah, they're gonna go against any tax increase, of course, for a standpoint of it's gonna hurt home sales, and that's what they'll.
But if we have no roads and we can't build any more houses, is that going to hurt home?
No, I agree, and it will. It'll definitely hurt home sales.
We're talking long term here, not.
And I don't think we're talking about 37 cents.
Right.
No.
We're a long ways from that. If you look at the total transactions that happened in this county last year, the recorded applicants of total dollars.
Right.
I mean, we might be talking about 10 5 to 10 cents max.
Correct.
Yeah.
Per transaction.
But I mean, it just goes back to
Yeah.
where we've been and making, the home builders may oppose, the realtors may have opposed it in the past, but it's a new day,
It's all about presentation
you know.
and how you present the facts, and hopefully how you can get the media to present the facts.
I don't know.
What I was
anything
gonna say
that's
on the
out of
government
Congress.
standpoint, me and Tim, you know, with him being part of the Home Builders Association and us being part of the RPAC and all that together, I mean, it's gotta come to a point to where we get the Home Builders Association and the realtors together and say, okay, I know that we don't always see eye to eye, but what is this, you know, where do we come together on this and say, this is a median? And we can all shake hands and go home happy. And I think that may even have it happen on, not just, you know, local, but at a state level as well.
And we need that collaboration
Right.
in with our hat as an elected official.
Yeah. We need that
We
collab.
have to have support of this industry.
We gotta have that collab. Or we get nowhere.
Well, we will, I guess, from the capacities that we're in here, some of us in the room, we'll take it back to our associations. In particular, our governmental affairs committees on both home builders and on the realtors, and talk about what's going on here and start putting out the figures to get feedback on where they would be. I can.
And we're
offer that
actually
up, I
having that
think.
tomorrow, so our government affairs meeting.
But you guys get the joke. The $1,500 ain't covering costs. I mean, you get that, right?
I just get that, again, part of it goes back to, I think what Joe had mentioned too, is you charged this, and it was supposed to go here, but it went to the general fund, and it's gone. And it didn't do anything
To help.
to improve infrastructure, because it was
Show us what you
misappropriated.
need, where it's going, and
Yeah.
And that development tax is a large tax on a small group,
Yeah,
rather than a small tax on a large group.
yeah, exactly.
And it
people
just
are still
doesn't-
moving in from out of state, buying
It'll
an
never
existing home.
provide the revenue that.
Yeah.
So you're back to why the property tax is
County, we're getting
the
a lot of
burden.
Williamson
Yeah,
County.
Because
it's
it's
a,
everywhere.
yeah.
A couple.
A few cents generates.
And I see the wheel tax and the gas tax and the transfer tax are all widespread taxes, and everybody that's using the roads pays a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, twice the biggest house here.
Got to make sure that they understand what to do nothing is, what the result
Yeah, it's
to
like-
do nothing is,
Sometimes pass.
which is going to stop or definitely slow growth, at least from residential. You don't have a lot of industry in the county, but the residential.
Doing nothing?
Great,
It's
yeah.
not an option.
Doing nothing is not an option.
Correct.
The result of doing nothing results in slow growth.
Correct, or stopping it, yeah. Because we're gonna,
Yeah.
yeah,
Your hands are tied.
okay.
You can't safely put people on substandard streets, transferring them in and out to the major thoroughfares if you don't make those improvements, so you don't have a choice. You gotta say, sorry, you can't develop that. It's a moratorium.
I once heard it said that when people start talking about traffic, just tell them, today is as good as the traffic is going to be moving forward if we don't do anything.
All right.
This is as good as it's going to be.
I agree, we're working
It's a
from
good
behind
one.
already.
Well, I think you gotta be careful with the message that, you know, if you don't do something, we're gonna slow the growth, because every public hearing you go to, 90% of the room would rather not anybody else move in.
It's a good point.
Good point. So you gotta be real
Good
careful with
point.
that
But
message.
what I ask most of them is, how many of y'all were born and raised
I
here?
know, but, you know,
I mean, it's okay for you to move in, but nobody
How
else.
many
But
of
that
those
still doesn't change
how
their
many of those
attitude about
people
it.
are
I
going to lose
know,
a job?
I know, but we need to
You know?
rethink that because, you know, it's a good place to live. Why would you not want to come here?
And we want to respect that.
Yeah.
That person, that fear they have, we have to empathize.
Well, I know.
And we have to balance it with the necessity to grow. So we have to
I
grow.
think you gotta spend less time on the necessity to grow and more about we need to fix the existing problem.
Agreed. Yeah.
That's what you sell.
That's
Because
what you
everybody
try to
will agree, we've got traffic problems,
Yeah.
and they're only getting worse. Nobody can disallow that.
I mean, I was born and raised there, and I love the fact that we have the amenities we have.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, it sucks. It'd take 20 minutes to get across the street, but hey.
It used to be a lot quicker.
Glad we have what we have. Now,
Action.
Yes. Well, you go ahead.
Well, action, the only action I could suggest, guys, is, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're going to take an action, try to invite the state delegation to the table as quick as possible. But I'd like to set another meeting date if possible. And this, we only do this if this is productive for y'all for our time. If we just hash out that the state ties their hands, we're not going to get anywhere. Can we meet again?
What are the other, like Eagleville and Laverne and Smyrna, what are their mayors or aldermen, what are they? If you're going to do countywide, do we not need to include those?
What we run into,
state?
What we run into with those is Rutherford County's we have mandates on certain things. So ultimately, we have to drive the wagon and then pull them along. But so from solid waste to schools,
right?
We have to do it. They participate if they choose. So, but to your point, we need to invite them to the table. But we have not polled them to see where they're at with it.
I know several of them, especially with roads, they may not be as sensitive to the schools, but they are very sensitive to the roads right now.
So it's time that we invite them in too to get
So if you get them in conjunction with you.
I think John even mentioned the mayor. So the mayors.
Well, I think that's where you start.
Can we, I wonder, do you think it would be productive to attempt to get both of those groups in ASAP? Or do you go one at a time? I mean,
both groups.
I would think, okay, the iron's hot, let's strike. So the state delegation to our state assembly and the mayors of the other municipalities at the next meeting, as many as possible. That could show.
Smyrna or Laverne or Eagleville opposing what you're doing. I mean, everybody's got to be pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine any of them that wouldn't be willing to come to a meeting.
Have a good round table discussion.
Right.
Are y'all-
Look, this, we're not carrying this off and talking about this after the meeting, but we need to have a frank discussion.
I think
It'd be helpful to get a whole dollar number that you're talking about trying to target.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
You do need
Right
that.
now, we're just talking
Right.
imaginary numbers.
Right.
I don't think there's not a set amount by law. It's reasonable notice, but you probably should go in line with what you've done in the past. It's probably.
So we could do it 2 weeks from now. Would y'all be willing to meet 2 weeks from now, same time, same place? We're going to publish that.
That's right.
We're going to shoot for the
It's going to take a minute for
target.
them to get it to the newspaper and to
We're
publish
going to
it.
shoot for,
Rachel only needs a week.
we think 2 weeks might meet the standard of,
Legislators, you may want to do it on a Monday because they go in late on Mondays.
They're not in session right now.
Are they not? Have they not started back yet?
No, they don't start back in
Okay.
January. They may be working, they may be on some subcommittee.
Yeah, I think some of them have a subcommittee.
The 29th?
They're not in session.
So the 29th would be a Tuesday, the 28th a Monday.
today is a Tuesday, excuse me. 2 weeks from today.
So the 29th.
That's assuming that the notice can get out,
Assuming that
which
the
I don't
notice
think
can
it
get
can.
out.
I'm not sure that it can. It's got to get sent over to the newspaper. It's got to be published in the newspaper.
Yeah, I thought that last time.
Rachel says she only needs a week.
Oh, that's it?
How many,
Okay.
didn't
No,
we,
that's
did it
totally
take us
fine.
2 weeks last time? We had this conversation about this meeting, didn't we?
Well, we didn't have a conversation about publicizing it. The mayor kind of took care of that.
I think that's fine.
But it took us about
Rachel tells me she only
2
needs
weeks
a week
out.
to get it published.
I think what it is it needs to be consistent. So it kind of depend
And
on.
I think the 2 weeks out was a target we achieved for this meeting.
Great. I think that's fine.
So
I think that's fine.
Because that was the big deal with the lawsuits.
We'd like to meet a couple of weeks from today.
Yeah.
Same time and place. 2 weeks from now, if public notice can be adequately submitted. We'll have it recorded for the minutes. And we're going to try to get mayors and legislators here.
And I'll send out an email to verify.
And a gross sum of, like a target revenue we're trying to reach. Right? That's kind of the.
For whatever we want to put this toward. I mean, you got to have something to aim toward, right?
Target revenue.
With an annual increase.
I'm sure Mike doesn't have anything to do. He can probably pull that together this afternoon.
Yeah.
You good with having that in a couple of weeks, Mike, a target revenue, or is that something that engineering and planning and road board maybe could discuss, or?
Just so we understand, you say target revenue, you're talking
Like a 20-year plan, perhaps?
like a dollar amount, how much would the improvements cost over that period of
Yes.
time? Okay.
And it's going to be $6 million a year.
And what does that? Does that
Wait,
include
to-
schools? Does that include schools or just roads?
I was gonna say, will that upgrade the roads you need upgraded?
Yeah, it's going to be, $6 million every 4 years, you do a $24 million job. That's
You're gonna need 2 or 3
12
times
million.
that.
One good bridge job, and that's gone.
But run one bridge job every 5 years.
Yeah.
We can't do one a year. We're doing 90 million in schools, one a year already. I digress.
We didn't talk about a stormwater fee. That's on the agenda. A couple things we didn't talk about, but Mike Hughes and I have talked about potential of a stormwater impact fee.
Do y'all do much stormwater maintenance out there yet?
This whole,
Highway department.
Highway Department does.
We have to have a stormwater department, which meets the state mandate.
Education.
We've got staff, we've got budget, we've got employees, we've got,
Based on
finally went to it.
square footage of impervious soil on it. So your roof, take your lot, and you don't count your roof and your driveway, you're assessed. So for a resident, it's like 25 grand. 12, 25 bucks.
Oh, man, you're right. Okay, so this will be
I'm going to grab you. So maybe you run through the mayor's office or you and try to get that message relayed to them because you're still voting members of our body that will be voting on it. But I want to grab you too.